How have you cheated the system? I once needed a last-minute one-way flight to Philadelphia, but they were really expensive. I instead found a flight to Orlando that had a layover in Philadelphia for a fraction of the price. In fact, the first leg of that trip was the exact flight that I was trying to book in the first place. So I booked it, and when we stopped over in Philadelphia, I got off and left. I had carry-ons only. On my way out of the airport, I called up the airline and said that I wasn't going to use the second leg of the flight, and the customer service rep cheerfully refunded the price of the flight from Philadelphia to Orlando, which was, for some strange reason, almost the full price that I paid for the whole flight. At the end of the day, my flight ended up costing me about $8. I sold lunch tickets. During elementary school, the way they did lunch was you handed your money over to your teacher, and the teacher would give you a ticket for what you bought. These were simple black ink on pastel-colored paper, 6 up on a sheet, that would say, pizza, lunch, nachos, etc. I was in an after-school program, and part of that entailed us sitting in the front office for an hour or so while we waited for our parents. I happened to see the original hard copy of all the types of tickets they used. I quickly snatched them up and slid them into my backpack. My only problem was now I had master copies but no way to print on colored paper. That was until we had a day off from school and I had to follow my stepdad to his job as an English professor. Needless to say, I found the colored paper and the printer I needed. $signs shot out of my eyes. If I remember correctly, I printed up 10 or so of each type of ticket, thinking I could retire from making that much money. By the way, lunch tickets were $2, pizza was $1.50, and nachos were 50 cents. I cut them up and returned to school to sell my counterfeit wares at half off what my competitors were selling, the school. I sold pretty steadily for a week before the school caught on that money and tickets weren't matching up. Almost got a teacher fired before a student ratted me out. I was never suspended, never had to pay back, since they had no idea how long it had gone on or how much money they lost, and from my parents I got a "I'm not even mad, I'm almost impressed" reaction. Made roughly $20 in a week. Being a fourth grader, I thought I had enough money to last the rest of the year. I later moved up to selling hall passes and candy bars in middle school. Fellow high school hustler here. My scam: around 1993 to 94 in San Francisco, I was given $20 each Monday morning for lunch snacks bus for the week. I would spend about $1 on lunch on Monday, then 35 cents to take the bus to the local baseball card shop. I would then spend around $18 buying as many Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal basketball cards as I could, legit ones, knockoffs, etc. I would usually have about 10 to 12 total, then jump on the bus into downtown SF. From there I would make the rounds to the different tourist shops, which sold $20 shitty t-shirts and such to out-of-towners. These were mostly run by Chinese dudes, who I convinced could sell these cards for $50 each, and I was selling them for $15 a pop. I burned a ton of bridges doing this. They all eventually caught on, but there were so many of these shops, and I was always willing to haggle, that I was able to make a pretty good run there for a bit. Unfortunately, I don't have any stories of buying anything cool, as I went to a fairly expensive school, and we were dead broke, so I used my money to pay for school books and class trips and such. Still, the rush of the con was all of the incentive I needed. Asked for a water cup, got soda. In the end you lose, because diabetes. Free diabetes. I graffitied my school as a senior prank. It was going to be demolished the next year anyways. Not dumb stuff either. I had spent a month designing and making a handful of quality stencils. A week later, I was pulled out of class because the police wanted to ask me some questions. I knew I wasn't busted because I used a mask, didn't wear my normal style clothes, and didn't drive my car there. Turns out they had heard a rumor that I might know some information about who did it. Then the cop shows me the pictures of every piece of graffiti in case it would help, because it was well-organized quality work these people had done. I then made up graffiti culture stuff because the cops were ignorant of it all. Told them each style of lettering would be unique to one person, so to look for a group of at least 4. Also pointed out the signature of the group in a photo, which was in reality just test spraying a can that has a broken nozzle. So basically, I tagged my school and then had a cop give me a slideshow of my work while complimenting it, all while actively throwing them off the lead. Me and some friends bought $5 nosebleed seats online for an NBA game. We looked online to see expensive seats that were not bought right before the game, and we opened the tickets in a PDF and changed our seats. It worked. We got in and sat in $300 seats really close. We felt so badass and couldn't believe it worked, but I still don't recommend this. I've heard of people getting into all sorts of things by wearing black clothing and carrying around a clipboard and ear mic. The key is confidence. Took an online multiple choice test. Answers in the source code. Got the idea from a different thread. I did this on a drug and alcohol education course after getting busted for consuming alcohol on my dry campus when I was 21 years old. I felt it was justified. In a higher level engineering class I was in, the teacher would assign online homework from his personal site. He was a nice teacher but would brag about this 16-year-old neighbor kid who was a prodigy because he could write submittable forms up for him in web pages as a way to administer homework to his college students, and he paid him a little bit to do so. All solutions were embedded in the code. At the time I was thinking, are you $@ing kidding us? And wondered if it was a decoy. Nope, correct answers. For Christ's sake, we were engineering majors, we breathed that junk. I went to get my car license renewed. You get a partially filled in form from the cashier, you fill in a bunch of stuff, and then you take it to get an eye test in their testing center, and then from there to get fingerprints, and then to get photographs done. You end up in another cashier's desk, pay for the new license, and leave all the form information there. The day I went to do this, the printer at the cashier's desk was broken, so she wrote in my new license code by hand. She put a code, E, normal car license in our country, which I changed to EB. I can now legally tow trailers that have a net weight under 500 kilograms. I lived in Singapore when I was 17. The drinking age is 18 and all of my friends had good fake IDs. I had my real driver's license from South Carolina that said my birthday was 9/2/92, September 2nd. They format the date differently in Singapore, so they read my birthday as February 9th, 1992, which would mean I was 18. I was able to get into clubs with my real ID that said I was 17 without having to lie. I was moving to a new town to go to the university. In Sweden you can sign up for a free queue to get student apartments. It is like an auction, where you bid on apartments with the number of days you have been in the queue, max 3 bid person and time. I did not have many days queued, having decided where to study only half a year before. However, I realized their system was pretty flawed. The thing was, it would only show the number of days by the number 1 bid, so that people would not waste their 3 bids on apartments they could not win. I had an old friend who lived in his own apartment, but was signed up in the queue anyway. He had over 2,000 days. When they released a new set of apartments, I asked him to sign up for the one I wanted, and so did I. For everyone visiting the site, it would show number 1 bid 2,000 days, which was pretty much the most anyone had, who waits 5 years to get an apartment. Out of all 20 apartments, the lowest bid on any was around 800 days, and the highest was OFC my friend. With 1 minute left on the auction, he drops out, and my 200 days win the apartment. I felt pretty clever that day. Can someone explain this to me like I'm 5 years old? Out of all the 20 apartments, the lowest number 1 bid was 800 days. However, no one other than me, with 200 days, and my friend, 2,000 days, bid on the one apartment I wanted. So when he dropped out the last minute, no one else had time to overbid my 200 I won. Think of it as 100 people bidding on 20 apartments. Everyone wants to win an apartment, and everyone got a number between 800 and 1,500. Except me with 200 and my friend with 2,000. When he instantly bets his 2,000 on one apartment, the rest knows they can't beat that since their numbers range between 800 and 1,500, so the other 98 people all bet on the other 19 apartments. That's stupid. The 20 apartments should have gone to the top 20 bidders across the board, especially if they were in the same building. A few were the same, but most were complete different: size, location, campus, price. So that would not work. You bid on the apartment that suited you. When I dropped out trade school in my mid-20s, I decided to just pretend I had a degree from a trade that I was interested in. I also spiced up my resume quite a bit. I knew the trade, it's just that I had no spare 2 to 4 years to study or money to spend, and there basically is no risk to it in my country except getting fired. It actually got me a decent entry-level job, and after a couple of years I was working alongside with people who all had college degrees. I got trained by the company, getting quite some valuable certifications. After I quit there, I switched the trade degree on my resume to a college degree. Backed up by my references, experience, and certifications, none of the companies I have worked for have ever questioned it. This all over the span of 9 years in Europe. It has been the most important decision in my life. Not really proud of it, but definitively cheating the system, and the salary I could have never wished for with just a trade degree is nice too. Back when Best Buy still had more laid-back rules on their black tie protection plan, extended warranty, I used to get $30 iPods. I bought the Nano back during its first generation years, and bought the protection plan. The plan lasts for 2 years, and one of the features of it is wear and tear. Apple releases new models of iPods once every year and a half or so, and it replaces the old version and stays in the same price bracket. I would go in and say that my iPod has scratches or whatever I wanted to say basically, and they'd either replace it with the current model or give you a gift card for your purchase amount. Then you just have to pay for the protection plan again and repeat the process next year. I had 10 iPods during childhood and paid full price for one of them. How have you cheated the system? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.